The world's top journals. I would give teeth to publish in either of these. How many teeth? Not all my teeth. More than 2, I think. Maybe 2. The allure of publishing here has proven too strong for some scientists. Let's talk about that. Have a look at this. Subjects were invited in to fill in a questionnaire and they could sit on any of these free seats. In this seat was an actor, either a Dutch African person or a Dutch Caucasian person, and where the subject sat was a measure of how discriminatory they were. So if they sat here, they discriminated this much. If they sat here, they discriminated this much. And then the whole thing was repeated in a messy environment, in an environment where there was graffiti and litter. All of this was done in a train station, and in the messy environment, the train station cleaning staff were on strike that week. Except they weren't. There never was any actor, there never were any seats, there never were any participants. There probably was graffiti since there was a train station, but we'll never know. What there was sweets that were going to be given to the participants as a reward for taking part in the study. They got eaten by one of the researchers. The study was written up and published in Science and later retracted. There were 2 authors. Apparently one of them didn't know anything about this and the other one was later prosecuted. So why did this happen? Was it just easy? Well, no. The difficult part of writing a paper like this is, number 1, the actual writing, the typing of the words to make it appeal to an academic audience. The second most difficult bit is the study design. So identifying a theory and putting together a study that can test or extend that theory is extremely difficult. And they had the writing skills and they had the skills to do the study design. In order to get published in a top journal, the data set that you're using has to, in the words of my friend Rob, sing. And it has to sing in a nice key. It has to sing beautifully. It has to tell a beautiful story. There has to be a clear effect, and that effect really should be dramatic. And very often you don't get that. Very often with the data set, it's noisy, it's messy. You have to use complicated statistical techniques to try and tease out what's really going on. The study concluded that when people are in a disordered environment, they will seek to increase order, and part of that is relying upon pre-existing stereotypes. So essentially, a disordered environment led to an increase in discrimination. Now, a few weeks after the paper was published, a letter sent to Science magazine criticised the study design. It said that the authors were careful to balance the sexes of all participants, and they were half female and half male. They did not balance the races of subjects. They were all Caucasian. Their conclusion that disorder affects stereotyping only holds if results from the neglected population, for instance black people, are irrelevant. This video is going to conclude with a critical look at the review process of top journals, but in actual fact those criticisms are not warranted. When we're interested in the impact of 2 different variables on outcomes, and each of those variables has got 2 different values, so we've got an ordered and disordered environment, and we've got a Caucasian and an African actor on the seat. We need to do 4 different conditions, and here they are. We need to do disordered with the 2 actors and ordered with the 2 actors. And the paper did that. So this criticism, while it raises an interesting point, it doesn't invalidate the experiment. The fact that there was no real data did that on its own. So we need a new ending for this video. Recently, the author that was involved in the fraud wrote a play about the whole experience and wanted to put it on in a Dutch festival, but it got cancelled. Had it been cancelled for plagiarism, that might have made a nice footnote to end this video on, but it wasn't. It was cancelled because of his bad reputation, which in my opinion was the wrong thing to do. The reputation of a playwright sometimes can increase ticket sales, not decrease them. So instead we're going to finish with this. Recently, an analysis was published of the fraudulent author's papers going back in time. They took about 30 of his made-up papers and 30 of his genuine papers and did a linguistic analysis of the two. And they found a difference between these two groups. So the fraudulent papers made more use of terms like certainty and statements about how certain the authors were of their outcomes. They also made more terms relating to the scientific method that they were using, so they described the method more. In addition, the writing style matched patterns seen in other deceptive publications. So for instance, the fraudulent papers used fewer adjectives, and this meant that they were able to analyse all of the author's papers and classify them as fraudulent or not fraudulent with quite high accuracy. And they conclude that deception can be seen in the writing style of scientific papers. Now, how prevalent is this sort of thing? I'm going to put a link down here to Retraction Watch, and you can keep an eye on these things yourselves. Essentially, at the moment, in the top 10 most fraudulent scholars, 2 of them would come from social science. So we've got this from psychology, and there's another professor from accountancy. And you can have a look yourselves and read about those.